Let's go over to the States now and speak to Democratic strategist Laura Fink and Chief Strategist for Republican Overseas, Erol Morkoc. Laura, how's that Fox News interview going down? Can I play you a clip from last night where Harris was got herself into a little bit of bother at a few points? See what you think of this.
The people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam Vice President.
You and I both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
but
people
you're the
have
lever
become.
of power.
But
Laura Fink, what was the candidate talking about? I'm confused as well.
Well, we have to turn the page. She's focused an entire campaign on the future. And Bret Baier is a good interviewer. And I'll gather that he did not, that wasn't her best answer. But I will tell you, she handled him. So thanks for picking that one. But she handled him on every other answer. And those clips are going right now. And specifically to Republican women, many of whom voted for Nikki Haley. There's a lot of women in this candidate's berth that are, in fact, thinking about voting for Kamala, but this may be what pushes them over the edge. She talked about Trump's instability. She talked about his erratic behavior and his decline on the campaign trail. So overall, I would say that may be not her best moment, but she nailed that Fox interview in the lion's den, something Donald Trump can't bring himself to do.
Do you think it was worth the risk? Obviously, I mean, some of the interviews she's been doing so far have been to a slightly less sort of hostile audience. Obviously, it was quite a combative exchange last night. Do you think the risks outweighed did the results outweigh the risk of it going wrong?
Absolutely. And I think the risks are going to be proven to pay off. You know, right now with the race this tight, you have to take risks. You have to prove that you're tough enough to go against a news organization that leans the other way, and some might say is cheering on your opponent. So I would say it was something that Trump is not qualified to do, frankly. They're hiding him not in swing states. They're hiding him in blue states right now. This guy swayed for 30 minutes to music and couldn't figure out how to run a town hall. So the advantage to Kamala Harris is that she has the skills to be out on the campaign trail pressing forward on offense, while Donald Trump is crouched in a corner and his team rightfully is hoping that he doesn't put his mouth in front of a microphone and make a catastrophic mistake.
Something has gone wrong though, because when Harris became the candidate, in the circumstances we don't have to go over again that she did in August, it ended up, she was far further ahead than she is now. The race is tightening. Something's going wrong, and it seems to me the more interviews she does, the more Trump sort of starts to pull away with it.
Well, that's a really wild oversimplification, but I will say this. We expected the race to tighten, and as all these races do, we are a divided country in terms of polarization. And so it really is about how do you execute in these last days of the campaign. And I would say Kamala Harris has the advantage. She's got the better ground game. The question is right now, Trump has the weather. He has the environmentals. That's what they were talking about in that Fox News clip. And that's what Kamala has to fight against. And it's remarkable that she's doing as well as she is. And I think you can credit that to the fact that voters may be a little sour on the economy, but they believe in poll after poll that she's the one fighting for them, that her policies are going to benefit their working class needs. And I think Trump is a little lost in space because he cannot complete an accurate sentence, and that is to his
well, you should have seen the other guy. Errol, what do you make of that? Trump can't complete a sentence and he's out of space. You going to take that?
Well, it's sort of hard to understand what she's trying to say, as though Donald Trump hasn't faced the most hostile media over the last 8 years of anybody possible. The sort of swaying on stage, there's a very obvious explanation involving other people in the room. They edited the video to make it look like he was confused up there. There's a lot of low-level trickster stuff. In the end, the Kamala Harris campaign, they're reeling, right? The winner of debates, the winner of the election isn't the guy who's out there looking for the soundbite, looking to make this. She's had to make this off offensive push because she's so far behind in the polls. She's behind in the polls. She's probably not going to win. And this is the last gasp of her campaign to try to throw something out there. She didn't do very well, but then again, it's a 50-50 election. She doesn't have to do that well. She only has to do, like you said, is to get those Nikki Haley supporters, people who don't support the Republican Party, into what it is today and see if she can win them over. If she can, it's worth it. But otherwise, I think she probably made a mistake going out there.
The Trump campaign seemed desperate to keep him on the messages of the economy and immigration. He strayed a little bit back into some of the more wild rhetoric that we were associated with him in sort of 2020, really, in 2016. Is that helpful? Is he blowing this campaign? Surely he just needs to keep his mouth shut for 2 weeks and not stir up trouble.
Yeah, I think he just needs to play it cool. I think you have Donald Trump. You can't tell him what to do. He's going to play the game his own way. He's got his own style. He's the Teflon Don for a reason. Things bounce off him. He's a different guy. But yeah, I think it's probably advisable that he just plays it cool. He's got a commanding lead in each of the swing states. As far as polling goes, I mean, if you're tied with Donald Trump, tied polling, you're losing because people are afraid to poll. With Trump, it's easy. You call somebody, say, are you voting for Trump? They say no. You say, is your neighbor voting for Trump? They say, oh yeah, him, he's doing it. So all it is people are afraid to talk to the pollster. So if the polls at this point are tied, we've got a pretty solid look at this election. It's not going to be an easy one, but I think we've got this one in the bag.
Laura, is that do you think that's fair? Do you think there's a shy Republican vote that's going to see you guys looking glum in 2 weeks' time?
Can you guess if one of these foods makes arthritis pain worse? Is it these tomatoes?
I think they've calibrated the polls, but I think that if you count on the polls, then you are in trouble. And this is a dead heat. I mean, I think the latest swing state polls show Kamala up +1 in 4 out of the 7 swing states. So I'm not counting on the polls, though, unlike my colleague. And I think some of this wild hubris is to the detriment of the Republican Party. We saw it at their convention. We saw it in the last midterm election. They're, counting on shy voters. I would say within the margin of error right now, when you're within a point, you have to have execution. And that's something that Kamala Harris and the Democrats have in state after state. It's something that I'm sure my opponent would concede the Republicans are deeply worried about. So if you're not worried going into the last 3 weeks of a campaign, then you're not working. I think you have to be on offense, you have to be inspiring, and you have to be able to attack your opponent over and over again, making those moments. I think Kamala Harris is doing that, and Donald Trump is somewhere swaying to YMCA. So I'm feeling pretty good, but the Democrats have to execute.
Erol, are you hubristic in this? Are you a bit too cocky?
I wouldn't say cocky, right? I mean, we have nothing to lose. If you look at the last 16 years, 12 of them have been controlled by her party. If you look at the last 20 years, 24 years, if you put the Bushes in the same camp with the Cheneys, who are now on the Democrat ticket, let's say, you have people on the Trump side who've been living in their world for 20 of the last 24 years. So maybe you can pardon the being relaxed for being confident. We don't have anything to lose. You guys run the entire country. You've been running the country the entire time. Everything that's been going on has been the purview of this sort of uniparty, the old Republican Democrat oligarchy. So the MAGA movement, the Trump voters, we're not nervous because, again, we have nothing to lose. We're in the pole position. We think we have a good shot. And if we lose, we still live in the same world we've been forced to live in anyway. So there's no real loss for us. All the pressure is on you, your candidate, and your side of the aisle, because if you lose, we're actually going to change the country in a way that would be demonstrably different than what you are used to. And that would be shocking or terrifying. And maybe that's why you're scared up to an election. But we have no fear because we have nothing to lose.
Laura, isn't the problem that Harris really is actually just struggling to distance herself from a fairly unpopular president and hasn't yet got an answer to that question of, well, hang on, if you're going to turn the page and if you're going to change things, why haven't you been doing this for the last 3.5 years?
Well, I think that's a Republican line of attack, and I will say that.
It's a fair question, I think, that we didn't get an answer to last night.
That's been the Republican line of attack since day one, and
she is the vice president.
In the short span of time, she's managed to consolidate a wildly disparate base under one umbrella. She's made up that delta in the polls, improved on Joe Biden's numbers, made the race a dead heat, and now she just has to close it out in the final quarter. And I would say this, I couldn't even make heads or tails of what my colleague was saying, but it reminded me of how Trump talks, where it just doesn't make a lot of sense as you're kind of saying the same one thing and then contradicting yourself. I will say this, I am working and focused on ensuring ensuring that Kamala reaches the infrequent voters. And I think that's the challenge in these final days. The voters that are thinking about maybe sitting on the sidelines, maybe voting, and the voters who have not decided. You see her doing that in targeted outreach. And I think she's been successful in reaching out to the voters where she needs to do a little work. Donald Trump, nobody knows what the plan is. The plan is to make sure that he doesn't make a catastrophic mistake. So I think being surgical is really important in these final days. And I think she's going to do that. And she's going to answer that question for those voters as she has.
Well, Adam Bolton's still in the studio with us. Adam, you can see right there how polarising this debate is, how split it is. Isn't this really going to come down to who can get their base out on the day and who's the most successful?
Well, there's also a question of what is your base? I mean, quite interesting there to hear George Bush Sr. and George W. Bush written off as effective Democrats. The truth is that if you're talking about the Republican base, there are a lot of people who do identify with them rather than with MAGA. And one of the things that Kamala Harris did in the debate last night was point out that she had 100 prominent Republicans in Pennsylvania appearing on her platform that day. 90% of the people who served in Trump's cabinet are not endorsing him this time round. So, I mean, if you boil it down, the question is, can you see any reason why Donald Trump, given everything that's happened, January the 6th, the various criminal cases, why any more people should vote for him? And whereas we've got this very divisive issue of abortion, where there is a lot of evidence. I'm not talking about fractions of a point, but
150 quid. The number is important because I'm about to show you what
big movements amongst female voters and white women voters because of abortion and rights against Donald Trump. So, you can see why more people might want to vote for Kamala Harris, and we know that Biden was seen as a liability because of his age. But, she did try and define it last night. I mean, there was that attempt to say, you're responsible for everything that Joe Biden's done. She had her chance on Fox News to say to people, look, it's going to be different. I'm going to do something new. That's why she's going out, because, as you say...
But do you think it's credible? Do you think punters will buy it?
Some may, women may. I mean, a lot of the analysis is saying she was really aiming for Republican women.
How helpful do you think Elon Musk was to Trump? Do you think that, over here he's seen as a slightly wacky, crazy guy, but, he is an incredible figure in US public life, right?
Look, I think the issue is not so much him jumping about on stage and saying he likes Donald Trump. I mean, the issue is the money that he and his cohorts, like Peter Thiel, are putting into the Trump campaign. I mean, in terms of raising campaign funds, in terms of getting people to register to vote and paying them to come, to go out and campaign, that can really make a difference. And he is concentrating on that swing state of Pennsylvania.
Laura and Erol are still with us. Guys, looking forward to November, possibly election night, possibly the weeks around it. Given how close this race is, do you think either side are actually going to concede on election night? Laura, this is going to end up in court, isn't it?
There's a difference between conceding on election night. We know that ballots take time to count. And so we know that in close races that there is a delay. And so you have to allow the ballots to be properly counted. I think the question is, will you accept the results of the election? And Donald Trump thus far has said that he will not.
But will the left in the United States accept another Trump victory? Your own candidate says he's not a legitimate candidate. So you're already laying the seeds there, aren't you?
We're not making noise saying that we are not going to accept the results of a free and fair election. The other side is, and that's dangerous territory for any democracy and for everyone, no matter what your political stripe. So I think they're preparing for that. And the overconfidence is part of that, the sort of framing it as Trump should have won. And I think it's dangerous. It's what led to January 6th, and we do not need a repeat of that behavior. But I worry that with the rhetoric coming out of Trump and Vance and the Republican Party, that we may be headed for more strife.
Erol, are we going to see scenes like we saw in 2021 in January?
Well, unlikely that would repeat itself. Unlikely that anybody would concede on election night, probably just at the pace that some states are counting. I think likely this one is going to come down to either candidate winning by a pretty large margin. I don't think it's going to be pretty tight. I think somebody's going to win a majority of the swing states, and they're going to have a pretty clear path after the first ballots come in. But that's neither here nor there. We have to see how it goes. We have to let it play out. But I do think that it's going to be a decisive victory regardless. So it might not be day one, but day two, day three. I don't think it'll get dragged out too long. Either we win or we lose. It'll be pretty clear from the start, I think.
What happens to the Republican Party if you do lose? Obviously it's almost unrecognisable as an organisation as it was 10, 15 years ago. It is Donald Trump's party now. He won't be able to run again if he wins, and if he loses, he's really going to have we're going to have another 4 years of this. What do you think happens to him in that scenario?
No, it's a great question, right? Because I mean, he obliterated the existing Republican Party that was there. The players who used to be there no longer are part of the party in a lot of respects, at least how the voters see it. I think if he loses, the party, interestingly, you've had so much young people come into the fold. You have new candidates, people like Vivek. You've got different MAGA sort of mentality that's come in. You have a whole new generation of people he's inspired. So on the silver lining, if we lose, there's a whole new generation of people who've been inspired by President Trump who want to make a difference civically in this country. That's great. But I think we're going to win. And I think when we win, we're going to have a President Trump who's had that 4 years of experience in the White House. He had the 4 years of being very sad outside of the White House the last 4 years. And then he'll go back, and now he's going to have some of the experience, know which players to bring, which players not to bring. And I think it's going to be a good, productive presidency. But if we lose, I think the party just will totally reinvent itself like it's done in the last 10 years. Totally unrecognizable now, will be totally unrecognizable in 10 years.
Guys, Erol, thank you. Laura, just one very quick final word. You guys going to win?
It's a dead heat. Anybody that says they know the answer is...
If you were a betting woman, what would you say?
I'm sorry.
No, we'll have to leave it there. Guys, thank you. Erol Morkoc, Laura, thank you very much. Don't go away.